This happened a few months ago, but I still think about it and get chills. I want to preface this by saying that while I don't live in the safest neighborhood, I've lived here all my life without feeling unsafe. Neighborhoods like mine, which are impoverished and predominantly minority, are often labeled as dangerous, but they foster a strong sense of community among residents. One night I was walking home after leaving my apartment to buy something at a nearby store. I live in a city that never sleeps, and it was only around 10 or 11 p.m., so it was just a regular early night of me going to the deli to get snacks. There was nothing eerie or weird or dangerous about it. As I entered my apartment building, a man hurried to catch the door before it closed behind me. It's common for people, including myself, to forget their keys or need to use the intercom to enter, so I held the door for him despite not recognizing him and sensing he was intoxicated. My building has two sides, and I assumed he lived on the other side since he wasn't a familiar face. Like I said, I've lived here all my life and know most of my neighbors. As I walked into the lobby, there was another boy waiting for the elevator. Thinking back, I don't believe I recognized him either. When the elevator arrived, the boy and I walked in, and at the last minute, the man grabbed the door to join us as it was closing. It was then I noticed the man had been lingering off to the side of the lobby, waiting for the elevator too. I began feeling uneasy because the man had entered at the last moment. He was able to see the elevator floor button pressed. His finger hovered over the button of the floor I had just pressed as he was also going to press that one until he noticed it was already pressed. I immediately felt my stomach drop as I definitely knew he was not someone who lived on my floor. Thankfully, the other boy in the elevator was going to a higher floor than mine. When we reached my floor, the man exited the elevator and held the door open, expecting me to exit after him. I hesitated, silently staring at him without moving. Something inside me urged me to stay in the elevator. Once he realized I wasn't getting out, he let the door shut, and I immediately heard his footsteps going straight down the stairs to exit the building. I stared at the boy, wondering if I should say something, worried he would think I was weird for just staying on the elevator, even though we passed my floor. I didn't say anything. We reached his floor, and he silently got off, and I took the elevator back down to my floor. I went in my apartment and locked all my doors. What scares me the most about this is that my parents were out of country, so if that creepy man would have forced his way into my apartment, I would have been alone. I don't know if he was really after me or if I made the whole thing up in my head, but I have never had a feeling of intuition or uneasiness like that before. Looking back, I wonder if that boy was a guardian angel. I sold the socks off my feet for $10. Someone bought the socks off my feet at the grocery store. Alright, for some context, I'm a 30-year-old female and live in the Midwest United States. About a week ago, I was shopping at my local grocery stores for a few things I needed. I noticed a man near me in the dairy section, looking at me intently a little bit, so I smiled as I walked away. I go through the checkout line and bag up my groceries and head out to my car. As I'm loading my items into the back of my car, the same guy I saw in the store pulls up behind my vehicle and says, "Hey, I have a question for you." I said, "Sure, what's up?" He then says, "Can I buy your socks?" At this point, I'm thinking I must have heard him wrong, so I ask him to repeat the question, and he proceeds to ask the same question. "Can I buy your socks? I'll pay you $10 for the socks on your feet." I said, why? He said, it's kind of my thing. I replied, like a foot fetish sort of thing? He said, yeah, something like that. Now, mind you, as he's asking me this, he has my car blocked in and he's reaching into his inner jacket pocket. Now, as a woman, I'm always aware of my surroundings and such. So at this point, my brain is thinking worst case scenarios. This man is about to pull out a pew-pew and unalive me if I don't give him my socks. So I said, hold on, let me go put this card back So I walk back to my car after returning the shopping cart, and he has now exited his car and is right next to my driver's side door. Now I'm panicking and I'm scared for my life. It's fight, flight, or freeze, and I'm frozen solid honey. So I sit in my driver's seat with the door left open, and I proceed to take my socks off of my feet and hand them to this guy. He says, "Thank you, you're beautiful, and your feet are so pretty." He then hands me the $10 bill and walks back to his vehicle and drives away. Now, this is by far the creepiest, scariest thing that has ever happened to me. And at this point, I am no longer wearing socks out in public. LMAO, tell me what you think about this and what would you have done in this situation? The man with the surgical gloves. This story is 100% true and it always creeped me out. I think about it a lot. About 3 years ago, I was out for a late night walk in a park that was about 2 blocks from where I lived at the time. It was a pretty safe neighborhood, so I often felt comfortable walking around alone during the late hours. I remember it being around 3:30 in the morning. Don't ask why I was up that late or walking around during that time. Let's just say I was going through some stuff. In hindsight, I know it wasn't smart, especially as a young woman. Anyway, I approached the park, which was lined with large bushes. There was also a street next to the park, and on the other side of the street, a large grassy field. Suddenly, I spotted a bald man carrying large objects wrapped in black plastic. He had on blue surgical gloves and a long plastic jacket. He seemed to be transporting these bagged items across the street from the park into the field. I stopped and watched for a moment as he began crossing the street again with more bagged items. He stopped when he saw me and ran toward the bushes. He stuffed the bags into the bushes and hid in them. I could see him clearly, and the whole situation gave me bad vibes. I quickly turned around and started walking back home. I glanced back to make sure he wasn't following me, and I saw his bald head peering over the bushes, staring at me. I started speed walking, and when I was about a block away, I saw him sprint across the street and hide behind a large tree. Again, all I could see was his bald head peering around the side of the tree, staring at me. By this point, my heart was racing, but I kept walking quickly. I didn't want to run because I didn't want him to know I could see him following me. My thought process was, if a lion is stalking you, it's not a good idea to run because they'll start chasing you. I just focused on staying calm and getting home safely. Finally, I reached my house and locked both the front and back doors. I tried to shake off what had happened and go to sleep. The next day was completely normal. I decided to walk to the park in daylight when there were lots of people around, and I checked the bushes to see if he had left anything behind. Nothing. Later that night, I sat down to watch a movie. I decided not to go on any more late night walks after that incident. Even though nothing happened to me, it was creepy, and I realized it could have turned into a bad situation. You never know what someone like that is capable of. It definitely seemed like I had caught him doing something suspicious. While I was watching the movie, I got up to grab a glass of water. My kitchen has a window next to the sink with a view of the backyard, and I always kept the kitchen lights off at night so I could keep an eye on the yard without anyone being able to see me. When I looked out into the backyard, to my surprise, I saw him standing in the middle of my yard, just staring at my house. I knew it was him because even in the dark, I could make out his pale bald head. I immediately cracked open the window and yelled, "Hey!" He took off running, leaving the gate to my fence wide open. Since then, I never saw the man again. I still have no idea what he was doing that night, or what his intentions were in following me home and stalking my house. But I don't think I want to know. I'm scared my friend is a future serial killer. I don't know if this sub is the most suitable place for this post, but I don't know what to do, so I'm just hoping to vent and hope for some advice. My encounters with this individual, who I will call Ben, began in November 2024 in school. He was a friend of one of my friends, Tom, and eventually we became a part of the same friend group. I have always found Ben a bit creepy, which seems to be the school population's general view towards him. However, once we began regularly socializing, I began to feel bad for my presumptions. That was until we were added to a group chat. That was when things started to turn. First, it was mindless, constant images of gore he would send involving torture victims and unalived children. I don't know if these images were real, but they made me very uncomfortable to the point I asked him to stop, to which I was told to take a joke and stop being a PUSSY. This was followed by messages where he stated he had killed a cat along with sick fantasies involving people I know. I wasn't sure if Ben was just your average edgelord, which was my other friend's attitude, but something didn't seem right. Then one Saturday, I was alone Christmas shopping in my town when I noticed Ben standing down the road from me, just staring directly at me. I waved at him awkwardly, to which he just stared before walking casually down a side street for the rest of the trip. Every time I turned, Ben was standing just staring at me at a distance. I eventually just gave up shopping and went home pissed. I texted him about it, to which he just stated he didn't know what I was talking about. Then in school, on lunch, Ben and another friend Jack convinced me to come with him to the forest behind our school with another friend Zach. It was stupid, I know, but I was bored and was accompanied anyway. We started getting deeper in, and Ben was becoming weird. He was laughing and kept repeating, "Closer, closer." Eventually, both me and Zach agreed it was creepy and off-putting, and we returned. Ben seemed pissed. When he and Jack returned, however, when we asked why they wanted us to go further, he responded he wanted to set a fire and show us. After this, I distanced myself and left the group chat, though was eventually re-added. While on my escape from that group, Ben attacked Tom with a homemade blade. I believe it was a razor from a sharpener in school, resulting with a wound near his wrist. This resulted in Ben being expelled from the school. However, no legal action was taken. It's now been a month, and I was re-added to the group chat to find that Ben has been sending graphic, self-destructive photos and talking about his hatred for his family, blaming them for his misfortune. I am worried he generally gives killer vibes, but perhaps I'm just being paranoid. I often wonder about that time in the forest and in the town plaza. Anyways, thanks for reading. Should I be concerned, or am I just overreacting? I sometimes worry that Ben knows where I live and isn't far away. When I was little, I was almost kidnapped from a water park. When I was about 4, this was in 1997, my mom and brothers went to a water park on a weekend during the summer. The park was set up so that you can walk through the entrance and run directly into a food court with the little information/map station. To the left was an inside arcade area with a little roller coaster directly outside of it, and behind the arcade building was an enormous wave pool. To the right of the entrance was a kiddie park, and then behind the kiddie park was a lazy river and all the water slides. Since my brothers were older and wanted to ride the big slides, my mom and me split up from them to head to the kiddie park. I remember playing for a little while making friends with other kids when this one little boy asked me if I wanted to go to the wave pool. Since I was little, my mom told me I was not allowed to go to the wave pool without an adult, so I told him I couldn't. He then said it's not a problem, my dad is already waiting for us, and he's already told my mom he was going to watch us. Well, being a dumb kid and marveling at the wave pool since we got there, I was pretty much sold and followed him over there. My mom probably didn't notice at the time because the lawn chair she was sitting in around the kiddie pool was being blocked by little kids' slide and a billion other little children. We headed to the wave pool and met the kid's dad. He immediately took my hand and guided me into the wave pool. I remember only being in there for like 2 minutes tops until he picked me up and carried me out of the pool. I don't think I even asked where we were going, but I assumed the food court because that's where we were headed. I then remember reaching the entrance gates and a lifeguard approached us and asked if my name was blah blah. I said yes and started crying because I guess I thought I was in trouble. The lifeguard grabs me from the dude and I see my mom running up sobbing. Years later, we are re- Years later we are revisiting this story and she tells me she noticed I was missing pretty quickly and told the lifeguard to close off the entrance to the park. I was wearing a yellow bathing suit with pink flowers on it and two yellow ribbons in my hair, so the description gave me away instantly when the man was carrying me out. I asked my mom about the kid, and she had no idea what I was talking about. She said it was just a singular man, and he ran to his car in the parking lot as soon as the lifeguard took me out of his arms. There was no kid with him. So, weirdo at the park, let's not meet. The man in the fog. I never post anything on Reddit, but I have to share this story because it really affected me as a child. When I was about 12 or 13, I used to play a lot of video games with my best friend, and we often played shooters together. As you can imagine, it's easy to get frustrated, and at one point, I ended up breaking my PlayStation controller. Since I didn't have a spare and couldn't continue playing, I told my friend that I had to stop. He said I could come over and borrow his second controller since he didn't live far away, just a short walk. I thought, okay, and told him I'd be over soon. So I grabbed my keys and started walking to his house. It was already dark, and since it was winter, it was snowing and very foggy. While walking, I had a strange feeling like I was being watched. I kept looking around but didn't see anyone. While I arrived at his place and picked up the controller, I saw through a window that a man was standing in the middle of the street. I pointed it out to my friend and we both wondered who or what was standing there. It looked like a person, but we couldn't make out any details, just a silhouette. Eventually, we decided to go outside and see if the person needed any help or if something was wrong. We stepped out and asked what was going on, but there was no response. The person just stared at us and then walked away. We were both confused and told his parents, but they just brushed it off, thinking we were imagining things because we play too many video games. After a while, I figured it was time to head home. Since we had played video games together for a while, I almost forgot about the strange encounter. But when I was walking back home, I started to feel the same eerie sensation of being watched. I saw a few passerby, but they all seemed normal, nothing strange. But just before I got home, I looked behind me one last time and I saw that person again. This time, standing behind a tree, staring at me. Then they started walking toward me and eventually they began running. I could tell it was an older man, probably around 60, but I was surprised at how fast he was running. He was shouting something in a language I didn't understand, but he didn't seem happy. I ran for my life, clutching my keys, and tried to unlock my front door as fast as possible. When I got inside, I quickly glanced back, but the man was gone. I rushed to my room and immediately told my friend what had just happened. He suggested I call the police, which I did, but since my description wasn't very detailed, the police took a report and didn't seem to take it too seriously. My parents were visibly shocked, but nothing ever came of it. In my village, 4 other people reported similar experiences, saying that someone was watching them or following them. I was one of them, but no one was ever caught by the police. To this day, no one knows who this man is, whether he's just trying to scare people or if it's just something more sinister. No one knows for sure, but everyone agrees that it seems to be a man around 60 years old. Beyond that, no one can give a detailed description. That day, I feared for my life. I've told many of my friends about this, and I've received mixed reactions. Some said it sounds like a spooky campfire stories, while others believed me and were visibly scared. A few even told me they had experienced the same thing. I woke up to a girl watching me in my sleep. My female friend came to visit me for a long weekend, and I, 22F, won't be letting her stay ever again. Backstory: we were friends for 3 months before we moved on to separate states and continued our friendship virtually until now. It has been a healthy relationship with open communication. We have had our disagreements, but mostly always talked it out and moved on. They mostly revolve around her believing I don't open up enough, and for me, she does things that are inconsiderate at times, like be jealous of my long term friends to their faces and have an odd attitude problem at times. Only has been shown maybe 3 times. She can also be a bit obsessive and get upset when I don't text her for more than a day. She's got loads of my photos saved to her phone and remembers every little thing about me and has a list of my interests. I have seen it enduring until now. The trip. Day 1. The first day of the trip was great. She was bubbly and brought me a gift with a sweet note of appreciation. We went clubbing and headed to bed separately for the night. This is where things got weird. Remember, we slept separately. Well, I woke up and she was in my bed, but not in my bed. She was sitting upright on top of the blankets next to me with her feet straight out and her back against my headboard while looking forward. I was startled and said, "Oh," instinctively. She just looked at me. She never said she was waiting for me to wake up or maybe she was uncomfortable on the couch. Nothing. Then she left my room. I have no clue how long she was sitting there. Day 2 and 3. Day 2, in the morning, we walked the city when she was engaged and wanting to hold my hand while we were out and about. By midday, still day 2, her attitude has shifted completely, and she is near mute. She isn't conversing with me, enjoying any activities, or even smiling anymore. At the bar, arcade, or even at home watching movies. You know how those driving games take a silly little photo of your profile pic on the leaderboard? I was blowing a kissy face in mine. I glanced at hers and even snapped a pic without her noticing. Her head was tilted looking forward up at the camera. She was blank-faced and you can mostly see the whites of her eyes. It was like the film poster of the horror film See The Orphan 2009. Anyways, for the rest of the trip, she continued to not smile. She was cold to every service worker. She responded with one-word answers otherwise, complained about any and everything. I asked, "Are you okay?" a couple of times, and she replied, "I'm fine," avoiding eye contact every time. Car rides were silent, dinners were silent. Day 4. Final day. I drove her to the airport at 3 a.m. I asked if she enjoyed her visit, and she said it was okay. It was fine. I told her I enjoyed having her. She boarded her flight and left. I cannot figure out what caused this 180-degree shift. I paid for everything, took her to all sorts of events she wanted to go, and even took a day off, my first sick day ever, to take her to more. I felt myself overcompensating because I felt insecure of being a terrible host or something. I have had several friends stay with me and express to me that they enjoyed themselves so much that they never wanted to leave. I don't believe I did anything wrong to ruin this trip. When she arrived home, she did not contact me, but she posted photos and videos of me captioned "mine" on her social media. I haven't brought this conversation to her yet. All of my friends and family believe I narrowly a Selena Yolanda lifetime film situation and that I was potentially with someone unstable. What do you think? I met my boss's stalker and I'm terrified. Have you ever looked into the eyes of someone who is truly crazy? Not someone who just does off the wall things but or acts different but genuinely insane? I have, and it terrified me. Let me back up. I will be vague on many details for obvious reason, but a backstory is absolutely necessary. I work for a large corporation. I actually have a couple of different bosses, but the one I formed a genuine friendship with is the one we will call Jeff. Jeff is a very laid back, go with the flow type of guy with a great sense of humor. I also should explain that he's single with no children. Not long after I started working with the company, we became friends, and he often stops by my desk to chat. It was about a year ago that he stopped by one morning, and I immediately knew he was not himself. He seemed distant and stressed, which is unusual for him. When I questioned what was wrong, he told me he needed to speak with me about a situation. Of course, I was immediately concerned and urged him to go on. He explained that a few years ago, long before I started at the company, another woman began working at the company. She was not in our department but did work within our company that required her to interact with leadership in our area, including Jeff. From this point on, we will call her Lauren. He explained his interactions with Lauren were not often, but she was polite and professional when they did need to speak. He said she worked for the company for less than a year and then left as she announced she was getting married and moving. That was that. He did not encounter her again until a couple of weeks prior when he received a friend request from her on social media. He explained he didn't think much of it and accepted it as he was Facebook friends with many colleagues, both past and present. He then messaged him later on after accepting the request. He said he chatted back with her initially as she seems to just wanting to catch up. He learned she had divorced and wanted to move back to our town. The conversation carried on normal until she asked if he would join her for dinner when she came back to town to visit in a couple of days. Jeff explained he politely declined her offer, and at first she took it well. Then it all went downhill from there. He stopped responding shortly after declining the dinner invitation, and within a few hours, he received erratic and insulting messages from her. Everything from calling him a wimpy bitch to saying she was the best thing he could have hoped for, and he blew any chance with her. He let me read some of these messages myself right then. He honestly felt they were drunk texts, but still bothered him, and he blocked her. He figured that was the end of it. How very wrong he was. She then began emailing both his personal and work email, pleading for another chance, saying she was drunk and didn't mean it, saying she needed to see him, and so on. I would get to read a lot of these myself, when I would later be asked to print these off for him for evidence. The reason he was telling me about this that particular day was because he had received a message request from Lauren's sister saying she needed to talk to him about Lauren and it was urgent. He accepted and responded to who we will call Beth. Beth told him something had snapped in Lauren when she went through her divorce and she became fixated on a man she called Jeff. Beth explained she had tried to talk some sense into Lauren when everything fizzled out with the initial conversation with Jeff, but Lauren wasn't having it. Lauren told Beth he was her soulmate and she was going after him. All this led to Beth explaining Lauren had flown in to our town and was staying at a hotel close to our company and was coming to see him at work. Jeff said he found out what Beth said to be true when he came in and found Lauren standing outside of his office. She immediately ran to him when she saw him and pulled him into an awkward hug. Jeff said he smelled alcohol on her and he immediately pulled away. She explained she was here to get her old job back and needed to see him. She also brought him gifts that included gift cards, snacks, and a picture of herself. Jeff refused these gifts, but she became more forceful and insisted he keep them. Jeff got away from her shortly after saying he had a meeting. He went to the HR to explain the situation and how he absolutely did not want her being employed there again. He provided me with a copy of the picture she left for him and said if I saw her anywhere around the company property to notify security. Beth later sent Jeff a picture of Lauren dressed as a man that Lauren had sent her saying, "I'm wearing a disguise so I can watch him without him knowing it's me." Again, this was nearly a year ago. Things only escalated. Lauren made multiple trips back to our town but would try to catch Jeff in the parking lot. He would find multiple letters on his vehicle from her. Sometimes they made no sense. She once left him two letters that said the exact same things word for word, but one was in cursive and one was in print. Jeff blocked numerous email accounts only for her to make new ones. She professed her love for him, begged him to warn her, stated she made him her beneficiary if anything was happened to her. She even sent emails that were clearly from her, but claimed to be from other men that wanted her and needed him to release her so that she could love them instead. Again, I got to read all of these when printing evidence. She eventually got his personal cell phone number somehow and began calling and texting him constantly. He'd block the numbers only for new ones to come through. This eventually ended up in court and a protective order was granted. This did bring things to a halt for a while. Jeff was finally himself once this occurred, as he had become a shell of a man himself. I felt horrible for him. This was until this week. On Monday morning, Jeff came by my desk and I could tell right away he was not happy. Before I could say a word, he demanded to know who placed all those letters on his desk. I was confused as I had no clue what he was talking about. I said as much and he explained there was a thick stack of letters and handmade Valentine's cards on his desk from Lauren. We later found out they had been stuffed under his door and the housekeeper found them scattered on his office floor when she went in to clean. She didn't know what they were and picked them up and neatly placed them on his desk. This was as troubling as it was figuring out how she got in the building in the first place. Shortly after, Jeff returned to his office to finish up some things before taking the letters to the police station. I was working away at my desk when I received a call from Jeff. Upon answering, I heard an almost panicked Jeff saying, "She's here." He explained he got a knock at his office door and he opened it to find her on the other side, grinning at him. He said he told her he was calling the police and slammed the door in her face and locked it. He called police and then called me to inform me she had been there and the police were on the way. I foolishly assumed she had bailed after he told her he was calling the cops. I got up from my desk and headed down the hall to Jeff's office to check on him and wait on the police with him. I stopped dead in my tracks when I saw her. She was sitting on the floor outside his office door, humming to herself. She slowly turned her head to look at me. I can't explain the knot that formed in my stomach as our eyes locked. She looked a lot like the picture Jeff had previously given me, but her eyes were different. They were dark. There wasn't that lively spark you see often in people's eyes. It was like they were hollow, void of any normalcy. Her lips slightly twitched up to a smile. She then slowly turned her head back towards Jeff's door, and she resumed humming. I booked it. I absolutely darted back to my desk. Thankfully, the police arrived shortly after. She didn't put up a fight. She calmly allowed them to arrest her and walked away willingly with them. Still humming, they informed us after. She's still in jail for violating the protective order. Jeff and myself are both still very shaken from the experience. I will never forget that look or her eyes, staring into an abyss of true insanity. I once went hiking with this guy and he showed me a body. This started when I was at my childhood friend's apartment for what was supposed to be a fun little movie night. We hadn't hung out in a while and we were catching up. Her place was cozy, a little disorganized, and full of girly decor. We were in our comfiest sweatpants about to watch princess movies. Her apartment isn't the most tidy, things are a little bit scattered around, but it's clean and so authentic, which always made me feel at home. We decided on ordering pizza for dinner. She mentioned that Sherwood, someone I hadn't met yet, would bring the pizza over. At first, I was not happy to hear that. I thought that she meant she had invited other friends, a boy, over to join us, which wasn't what I had in mind. But I was in for a surprise. Sherwood turned out to be just our delivery guy for the night. He wasn't joining us. When he got to the apartment, there was this awkward air about him. He was obviously nervous, fumbling a bit with the pizza boxes and not quite making eye contact. My friend introduced us quickly, and it was clear from her overly thankful demeanor that Sherwood did a lot more for her than just fetch dinner. After handing us the pizza, there was this brief moment of forced small talk. My friend was super nice to him, despite his awkwardness. He wasn't the best conversationalist and seemed really out of place. Then Sherwood asked for my number. I was in a tough spot because our mutual friend was sitting right there, so I just gave it to him. Yeah, we chatted for maybe 5 minutes before my friend gave him a cue to leave with something like, "Thanks so much for dropping this off." He seemed to get the hint. We both gave him a hug before my friend said something like, "Drive safe," giving him another kind of cue to leave. When I asked my friend what was that all about, she basically explained that Sherwood was her unpaid personal assistant. He did her grocery shopping, he dropped off pizza, and he did all this other stuff. I think Sherwood was just a really lonely guy, desperate for interaction, especially female interaction. My friend and I were both young and immature back then. We were about 23, but I think we both knew something was seriously wrong with Sherwood. It was a little hard to articulate, but we couldn't point out exactly what his problem was. Sherwood started a group chat with my friend and me. He just sent a meme or two every week. It felt like he was trying to stay relevant without being intrusive. Maybe he was used to being sidelined or even blocked by other girls in the past. It felt like he was trying to make me remember him, but also carefully trying not to give me a reason to block him too. I can't speak on his behalf. This was just what it felt like. Sherwood also offered help with errands. The first time I said thanks for asking, but no. He asked every weekend after that. One day I made the mistake of accepting his help. I knew better. I had recently found a great deal for a new washing machine on Craigslist, but I had no idea how to pick it up and install it. When I mentioned it in the chat, Sherwood excitedly volunteered to take care of the whole thing. He handled the whole pickup and installation like a total champ, which saved me so much hassle. I tried to pay him for his efforts because I wanted to show appreciation, but he wouldn't accept any money. I insisted. Eventually, he suggested I could repay him by joining him for a hike. Like what? I was uneasy about this. It felt a bit too personal, and almost like it could be mistaken for a date. But Sherwood framed it as nothing more than a friendly outing, like a transaction to balance out the favor. I agreed to the hike. I rationalized it by telling myself it was fair trade for installing the washing machine and that it was generally a form of payment, especially since I didn't think he had too many friends. This hike felt like maybe a way for him to have some companionship. I thought it might be nice helping him. Part of me was still uneasy about spending time with him in such an isolated setting. The day of the hike, Sherwood picked this trail that was nearby. I had been there before. It's gorgeous. As we walked along together, he chatted about ordinary things like work, the weather, and his hobbies. Everything seemed normal until he suggested we go off the main path to see something special he wanted to share. Like, what could that even mean? We reached the secluded post, and there, oh my gosh, was a body. My heart pounded so violently as Sherwood stood there so eerily calm and nonchalant. The casualness in his demeanor made me feel even more uneasy. It felt like he wasn't just showing me a dead body but also revealing his darker side of himself. It smelled bad, but not like in the movies. I didn't know how long it had been there. I'm not a biologist, but my guess is that it had smelled a lot worse, but now it had gone down. At that moment, I mumbled some excuse about needing to get back quickly and started walking briskly towards the main path. I was urging Sherwood to follow me. I thought maybe this was some twisted mind game, like a way to intimidate me or show that he wasn't just some harmless little boy. Maybe he was trying to send a message that said, "You should know I'm familiar with these things." Oh, there's another possibility. Maybe he just wanted me to think about him more. Sometimes when I talk to people, I feel like they only notice me for the time we are together, and then they won't think of me again until the next time we meet. It's possible Sherwood felt that way with me, and maybe he thought showing me a body would make him less forgettable. I have no idea. But on the surface, he seemed oblivious to how inappropriate this was. As we walked back together, I was in full flight or flight mode, instinctively looking around to see if there were other hikers or rangers, anyone who could make me feel like I wasn't alone. The moment I spotted someone else on the trail, I called out, not to expose Sherwood, but just asking for directions back to the parking area. I wanted to make sure Sherwood and I wouldn't be left alone together. I asked this gentleman to walk us back to the parking lot. I wasn't going to take no for an answer. I kept pretending like I was confused about his directions, and eventually he agreed to just walk us there. Getting help from that guy was my way of re anchoring myself to safety and normality, while I was still under the shock of what Sherwood had shown me. We got to the parking area. There, I called my friend and told her I was with Sherwood. I suggested he could drop me off with her and that we'd be there in 20 minutes. Sherwood agreed. That was my way of making sure that if anything happened, it was on record that Sherwood was the last person to have been with me. Also, I immediately texted my friend what had happened to get that on the record too. When I got to her apartment, we said thanks to Sherwood and kindly told him to go away. I had already told her through text, but then I started going into all the detail. The fact that the body had insects, the fact that the face was decomposing but still recognizable, etc. Her reaction was pure horror. Not just about the body, but also how nonchalantly Sherwood had treated the whole situation. She confessed she always sensed something was off about him, even though she had never imagined anything this disturbing. We both agreed we needed to remove Sherwood from our lives. She admitted she felt stuck, and she had become too reliant on Sherwood to just fire him cold turkey. We planned out how we would do it. It was this gradual phasing out plan. We would limit our interaction to times when others were present. We would slowly reduce our responses to his texts. I would never ask for his help again, and my friend would ask for less and less help. Sherwood kept texting during weekends, offering to run errands or asking if we needed anything, to which my friend would reply, "I'm just trying to work on being more independent, but you have really been such a help." Eventually, as my friend started dating someone new, she introduced Sherwood to her boyfriend. Sherwood never contacted her after that. I had called the cops the same night of the incident, but it was a while before we heard more news about it. At least a full month later, a news report confirmed discovering a dead body in that area where Sherwood had taken me hiking. They made an arrest, not of Sherwood, but of this other guy that Sherwood followed on Instagram. I have no idea if Sherwood was connected to the murder. Reflecting on everything, I think there's one clear moral of the story: trust your instincts.